All right, in this video, we're going to talk about desired state and how that impacts Terraform. Now, Terraform desired state is really going to be what you want to build, right? So say, for example, you have a project and you want to build 3 virtual machines, a load balancer, a DNS record, and maybe a database for the application to connect to. Well, that's your desired state. Say, for example, you want to create an EKS cluster. Well, that's your desired state. And desired state is how Terraform understands what you want to build. And so when we're working with Terraform, what we want to do is define our desired state inside of our Terraform configuration. And that's really the reason that we create a Terraform configuration. So what we're going to do is we have a configuration file we're going to use in this box, and then we have our cloud provider over in this box. And so in this configuration file, it may be a main.tf file here. And what we'll do is define our desired state inside of our Terraform configuration and see how that impacts our cloud provider. So I'll write cloud provider over here. Now this could be a cloud provider, a public cloud provider. It could be a private cloud, right, on your data center. It could be any kind of SaaS application or really anything that has an API that supports a Terraform provider, all right? So when we want desired state, we would start configuring and writing our Terraform configuration file. So say, for example, the first thing we want to do is maybe we want to create a VM. So inside of our Terraform configuration file, we may create a new resource block inside of our configuration that may be for a VM. Right, inside of this resource block, we define what kind of virtual machine it is, how big it is, how much memory, how many CPUs, how many disks, all that good stuff. Now, once we properly define that inside of our main.tf file, what we'll do is we'll go through the Terraform workflow. We'll run an init, we'll run a plan, and we'll run an apply. Now, once the apply is done, what's going to happen is on our cloud provider, well, it's going to build out our VM over here in our cloud provider. And this is a real world resource, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about Terraform, we have a configuration, we compare that to real world resources. Things are actually running in the cloud, right? This is a virtual machine that you connect to and run application workloads on. All right, so we've added a VM to our configuration file, we ran an apply, and now we have a real VM out on our cloud provider. Now, obviously, we can iterate and add more or remove things from our Terraform configuration, again, depending on your desired state and what you need. So say, for example, there is a new requirement to create a new subnet. All right, so what we can do is we will add a new resource block in here, and we'll just call this subnet. All right, so we've defined a resource block in here. Maybe it's an AWS subnet, maybe it's running in Azure, it doesn't really matter. So once we defined our subnet in here, what IP address it wants, where is it gonna be, some of the configurations a part of our subnet. Well, once you run the apply here, of course, over in our cloud provider, again, we are going to have a new subnet, and this is all based upon the configuration. Now, what happens is when you have a VM and then you have our real world VM, when you add a subnet over here, well, this is our new desired state, right? We're telling Terraform in our desired state, we want this VM and we want this subnet. Well, what happens is after we run the apply or the plan, when we add the subnet, Terraform is going to compare our desired state with what's actually running in the real world. And before we add that subnet, well, we only had a VM running in our real world resources, right, on our cloud provider. So what happened is Terraform compared it and said, oh, you know what? I need to add this subnet. And so it deploys and adds the subnet in your cloud provider. Now, of course, we can do the same thing too. We can modify our configuration. Say, for example, we've got our VM, we've got our subnet, but you know what? Oh, maybe we have a new requirement for our VM to add a new disk, right? Or maybe we need some more storage. So over here, we can modify our VM, and I'm just gonna add a block here, and we'll say, okay, this is a new volume that we want to add to our VM. And of course, we run through our Terraform workflow again, we run a plan, we see that, oh, something has changed in this VM as compared to the real world resource. At this time, the cloud provider doesn't have this extra volume, although we've defined it here. So Terraform knows that we need to make a change in our cloud provider, our real world resources, in order for our desired state to match what's running in the real world. All right, so we're gonna run our plan, we'll run our apply, and of course, Terraform uses the cloud APIs in order to add this new volume, all right? So now our VM has this additional volume because that is what is defined in our desired state here, all right? So we've added a few resources, we've modified an existing resource. Well, what happens when we don't need a resource anymore? Maybe this subnet was used for testing, but it's not used for production and we no longer need it. Well, what happens is that all we have to do to get rid of it is, well, we just delete it outside of our desired configuration. So we can go into our main.tf file here and we simply delete the resource block of the resource that we no longer need. So when we run a Terraform plan, it's going to notice that, you know what, our desired state no longer has this subnet. And you know what, Terraform was tracking this subnet over here. So there's a change as compared to the desired state of what's actually running in the real world. And it's saying, you know what, we don't need this subnet anymore because we've removed it from our desired state or our Terraform configuration. So of course we run our Terraform apply. And what does Terraform do? Well, it goes to our public cloud API and it deletes this subnet in our public cloud. All right, so that's how desired state works. Terraform looks at what's inside of our Terraform configuration. Now this could be one file or it could be many Terraform files, right? You can have multiple .tf files that define your desired state in terms of what resources that you want to run, what you want to create, manage, etc. And then what happens is Terraform is going to compare the desired state with what's running in the real world, and it's going to make the change based upon what is shown in the desired state as compared to the cloud provider. So again, if we don't need this new volume or we don't need the VM anymore, we simply go into our main.tf. We simply delete our resource block out of here. Now say if there's other resources in here, doesn't really matter. We run a Terraform plan, run it and apply, and the beauty of it is Terraform goes and it deletes this VM out of our cloud provider. Now this allows us to save costs, right? Because we can simply delete our resources inside of our main.tf and it deletes it on our cloud provider. We no longer have to pay for those charges. It also allows us to run a Terraform destroy. So if you want to keep those blocks in there, you can simply run a destroy and it will destroy everything in terms of the desired state that's running in the cloud provider. This allows you to delete everything in the cloud provider, but still maintain your Terraform.tf. So that way you can turn around and redeploy it in the future. All right, so that's how Terraform uses desired state. Again, it compares your configuration files, what you've created in your .tf files, with the real world resources, and it makes the changes to ensure that what's running in the real world is reflective of what you have inside of your .terraform files and your desired state.